Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the oracle at Delphi, ancient Greece's drug-fueled prophecy machine that shaped history. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. For more than 1,000 years, from approximately 800 BCE to 390 CE, a woman sat in a chamber at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, inhaled vapors rising from a crack in the earth, entered a trance state, and spoke words that shaped the fate of kingdoms. She was called the Pythia, the Oracle of Delphi, and she was consulted by every major power in the ancient Mediterranean world before any significant decision, before wars, before the founding of colonies, before the passage of laws. The Athenians consulted her before the Battle of Marathon. Alexander the Great consulted her before his conquest of Persia. The oracle told King Croesus of Lydia that if he crossed the Halys River to attack Persia, he would destroy a great empire, a prophecy so crafted that it was accurate regardless of outcome. The Oracle of Delphi was the most influential voice in the ancient world for more than a millennium. And for most of the 20th century, historians assumed the whole operation was a sophisticated fraud. The oracle's trance states, her cryptic pronouncements, the sacred vapors rising from the ground, ancient accounts described all of these as real phenomena, but for most of modern history, scholars assumed the descriptions were poetic license or pious invention. No geological evidence of vapors from the ground at Delphi had ever been found. The oracle chamber, Aditon, appeared in archaeological excavations to be a plain stone room with no obvious source of trance-inducing fumes. The conventional interpretation by the mid-20th century was that the oracle was a skilled performer whose trance was theatrical and whose prophecies were the product of clever ambiguity and extensive information-gathering networks that the temple priests maintained across the Mediterranean world. Then, in 1998, a geologist named Gel de Boer of Wesleyan University was walking the ruins of Delphi and noticed something that previous archaeological surveys had missed. The temple was built directly at the intersection of two geological fault lines, and fault line intersections in geologically active regions like Greece are precisely the locations where petrochemical gases seep upward from the earth. A research program that followed confirmed the presence of ethylene and other psychoactive gases in the geology beneath Delphi, gases that, when inhaled in confined spaces, produce exactly the dissociative trance states described in ancient accounts of the oracle. The Oracle of Delphi was not a fraud. She was sitting above a natural hallucinogen. The most influential prophet in the ancient world was, literally, high. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the global puzzle of unexplained ancient construction, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Archaeology is, by its nature, an incomplete science. We find only what survives, and what survives is determined not by importance, but by durability. Stone lasts, wood rots, metal corrodes, ceramics endure. The written word survives only if it is inscribed on stone or baked clay. Papyrus and vellum are hostages to humidity and fire. This means that every picture of the past, assembled from archaeological evidence, is a distortion, biased toward the materials that happen to last, rather than the activities that define the culture. With that caveat in place, the structures that do survive from the ancient world are sometimes inexplicable by any conventional model of the societies that built them. Fine stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons, fitted together with tolerances measured in millimeters, transported from quarries dozens of kilometers away, and raised to heights that challenge modern cranes. We find astronomical alignments so precise that they track the movements of specific stars over periods of thousands of years. We find architectural proportions that embed mathematical ratios, pi, phi. The Pythagorean theorem in civilizations that supposedly had no formal mathematics. The challenge these structures pose is not engineering alone. It is conceptual. How did people without our tools conceive of projects on this scale? How did they solve the organizational problems of feeding and coordinating tens of thousands of workers over decades? How did they transmit technical knowledge across generations without standardized notation? The buildings stand as proof that they did it. The question of how remains genuinely open. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the oracle at Delphi, ancient Greece's drug-fueled prophecy machine that shaped history, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The oracle at Delphi was active from at least 800 BCE, though the site had religious significance dating to the Bronze Age Mycenaean period, approximately 500 BCE until 390 CE, when the Roman Emperor Theodosius I ordered the closure of all pagan sanctuaries. This gives the oracle a continuous operational history of approximately 200 years, making it one of the longest functioning religious institutions in the ancient world. The oracle was consulted by an enormous range of historical figures, including Lycurgus, who sought oracular sanction for Sparta's legal code, Croesus of Lydia, multiple Athenian leaders, Philip Roman II of Macedon, and Alexander the Great. This single data point, if taken in isolation, be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Pythia was always a woman, selected from the local women of Delphi. In the oracle's busiest periods, approximately 5th-4th centuries BCE, multiple Pythia may have served in rotation to handle the demand of consulting parties from across the Mediterranean. The woman underwent a preparation ritual, including bathing in the Castalian spring, drinking water from the sacred Cassodes spring, and chewing laurel leaves, known to contain trace psychoactive compounds. She then descended into the Aditon, the innermost chamber of the temple, where she sat on a tripod above the chasm from which the sacred vapors rose. The gaseous exposure, combined with the psychological preparation and expectation of divine communication, likely produced a genuine altered state. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The geological work by Gel de Boer and John Hale, published in Geology magazine in 2001, identified the fault system beneath Delphi and found evidence of the petrochemical gases it can release. Specifically, they identified the presence of ethylene in travertine deposits at the site and in the spring water of Delphi. Ethylene C2H4 is a gas that at low concentrations produces euphoria and a dissociative state of altered consciousness, precisely the enthusiasmos, possession by the god, described in ancient accounts of the oracle's trance. At higher concentrations, ethylene is toxic, which may explain the ancient reports that some Pythii were overcome and died during consultation sessions. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the political function of the oracle extended beyond religious consultation to active geopolitical management. The temple priests, who received consulting parties and transmitted the oracle's pronouncements, accumulated extensive information about affairs across the Greek world and the broader Mediterranean. They reportedly maintained formal relationships with all major Greek cities and kingdoms, received embassies from as far as Egypt and Rome, and used their knowledge strategically in crafting oracular responses. The oracle functioned effectively as an information clearinghouse and diplomatic institution, as well as a religious one. The soft power of Delphic authority was based as much on this information network as on the oracle's pronouncements themselves. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Delphic oracle's famous ambiguity was noted by ancient commentators and has been much discussed by modern scholars. The most discussed example is the response to King Croesus of Lydia, who asked whether he should attack Persia. The oracle responded that if he crossed the Halys River, he would destroy a great empire. Croesus crossed the river and was defeated by Cyrus the Great, destroying his own empire. The oracle's prophecy was accurate regardless of which empire was destroyed. This pattern of prudential ambiguity, responses worded to be verifiable whatever happens, has led some scholars to see the oracle's pronouncements as skilled political rhetoric rather than genuine prophecy. Others argue that some prophecies, including several that accurately predicted specific events, cannot be explained by ambiguity alone. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: Delphi's role as the navel of the world, omphalos, in ancient Greek cosmology, was expressed physically by a conical stone object called the omphalos stone, which was kept in the temple and believed to mark the exact center of the earth. According to myth, Zeus released two eagles simultaneously from the eastern and western ends of the world, and they met above Delphi, confirming it as the world's center. The omphalos stone that survives, a carved conical stone now in the Delphi Archaeological Museum, dates to the Roman period, but represents a long tradition. The association of Delphi with the Earth Center enhanced the authority of its oracle by placing it at the cosmic intersection point of divine and human communication. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the oracle at Delphi, ancient Greece's drug-fueled prophecy machine that shaped history. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the geological trance theory, supported by de Boer and Hale's research, holds that the oracle's trances were genuine altered states of consciousness produced by exposure to ethylene and possibly other psychoactive gases rising from the fault lines beneath the temple. Under this model, the oracle's behavior was not theatrical, but reflected genuine neurological effects of gas exposure, and her utterances, which needed to be interpreted by the priests, genuinely represented an unusual cognitive state. The geological evidence for fault lines and gas-producing rocks at Delphi has been confirmed independently, though the specific identification of ethylene as the primary agent has been debated by geochemists. This interpretation has significant academic support. ND is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the political intelligence theory emphasizes the oracle's function as a diplomatic institution rather than a mystical one. Under this model, the oracle system worked because the temple priests at Delphi maintained a sophisticated information network spanning the entire Mediterranean world. All consulting parties had to travel to Delphi and wait their turn, during which time the priests questioned them, and information from one consulting party could be used to craft wiser responses to another. The oracle's authority derived from the genuine geopolitical intelligence the temple possessed, not from supernatural communication. The trance state, whether genuine or theatrical, provided a legitimating ritual frame for responses that were actually the products of careful deliberation. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the sacred drama theory, a synthesis of the two previous models, proposes that the oracle system combined genuine physiological effects from the gas and from the psychologically intense ritual preparation with skilled priestly manageme of the resulting utterances. The Pythia's trance may have been real. The interpretation of her utterances as intelligible prophecies was the priest's work. The final oracular response delivered to clients was thus a collaboration between the genuine altered state of the Pythia and the interpretive skill of the priests, a sacred drama with both authentic and constructed elements. This model accommodates both the ancient accounts of genuine trance and the modern evidence for political information management. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the oracle at Delphi, ancient Greece's drug-fueled prophecy machine that shaped history, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the geological survey of the Delphi site by de Boer and Hale, 1998-2001, is the primary physical evidence for the gas trance theory. Using geological mapping, water sampling from the Castalian and Cassodes springs, and analysis of travertine deposits in the area, they identified the intersection of two fault lines directly beneath the temple's Aditon, and found trace concentrations of ethylene and methane in the water and travertine that are consistent with petrochemical seepage from the fault. The ethylene concentrations found were below those required to produce toxic effects, but potentially within the range associated with dissociative effects when inhaled in the confined space of the Aditon. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented ancient literary accounts of the oracle's behavior, including the observations of Plutarch, who served as a priest at Delphi in the 1st-2nd centuries CE and wrote extensively about the oracle, described behaviors consistent with chemically induced altered states rather than theatrical performance. Plutarch describes the oracle as sometimes being in profound distress after consultations, as sometimes being incoherent, as occasionally dying from the effects of especially intense sessions, and as the quality of her prophecies depending on her physical and psychological state. These observations are more consistent with genuine physiological effects than with conscious performance. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the accuracy of some Delphic oracles, particularly those that provided specific, non-ambiguous predictions, has been used to argue that the oracle system had genuine predictive capability, possibly based on the extensive information network the temple priests maintained. Scholarly analyses of the corpus of Delphic pronouncements recorded in ancient sources, approximately 535, survive in some form, have found that roughly 75% were fulfilled in the general direction of the oracle's prediction, while many of these can be explained by ambiguity and retrospective attribution. Some specific prophecies, including the prediction of the Athenian disaster in Sicily, appear to involve genuine geopolitical intelligence rather than deliberate vagueness. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the oracle at Delphi, ancient Greece's drug-fueled prophecy machine that shaped history. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The archaeological site of Delphi is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most visited archaeological sites in Greece. The Delphi Archaeological Museum houses an extensive collection of votives, sculptures, and the famous charioteer of Delphi, a 5th century BCE bronze statue that is one of the best preserved ancient Greek bronzes. Ongoing excavations at the site, managed by the French School at Athens and the Greek Ministry of Culture, continue to refine understanding of the sanctuary's physical layout and chronological development. The geological research by de Boer and Hale, though initially controversial, has been largely accepted as the best current explanation for the oracle's trance states, and geochemical surveys of other ancient oracle sites, including the Plutonian at Hierapolis in Turkey, where animals were observed to die from volcanic CO2, have confirmed that gas-producing geology was intentionally associated with ancient prophetic sites. The Oracle of Delphi has become a popular reference point in discussions of ancient wisdom traditions, the relationship between religious and political authority, and the psychopharmacology of spiritual experience. The discovery that the ancient world's most influential oracle was genuinely experiencing chemically induced altered states, rather than performing or deceiving, has been seen as both vindicating the ancient accounts and adding a sobering pharmaceutical dimension to the history of art. Elegion, the oracle's role in shaping major historical decisions, the colonization of Sicily, the Persian Wars, the Macedonian conquest, means that petrochemical geology literally altered the course of Western history. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Oracle at Delphi, ancient Greece's drug-fueled prophecy machine that shaped history from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Oracle of Delphi ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in Thai's documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.